Become extraordinary. 12 habits that separate the exceptional from the ordinary, written and published by Audiobook Institute. Extraordinary lives are rarely created by extraordinary luck. They are built through ordinary decisions repeated with extraordinary consistency. While many people spend their lives searching for the perfect opportunity, exceptional individuals quietly master themselves. They think differently, regulate their emotions, develop disciplined habits, and consistently choose long-term growth over short-term comfort. The greatest difference between ordinary and extraordinary people is rarely intelligence, talent, or resources. It is the standards they hold themselves to. Extraordinary individuals expect more from themselves before expecting more from the world. They understand that identity shapes habits, habits shape character, and character ultimately shapes destiny. Modern psychology reinforces this truth. Excellence is not a personality trait reserved for a gifted few. It is the natural outcome of identity-based habits, emotional regulation, deliberate practice, resilience, and purpose-driven action. Every remarkable achievement is preceded by thousands of invisible decisions that no one celebrates, but that quietly shape the person someone becomes. This audiobook explores the 12 foundational habits shared by extraordinary people across every field of life. You will discover how to build unwavering self-discipline, think independently, overcome fear, strengthen meaningful relationships, maintain relentless consistency, and develop the mindset required for lifelong excellence. By the end of this journey, you will realize that becoming extraordinary is not about waiting for the perfect moment or becoming someone entirely different. It is about making intentional choices every day that align with the person you aspire to become. Each chapter builds upon the last, revealing how small improvements accumulate into extraordinary results. As your habits evolve, your thinking changes. As your thinking changes, your identity grows stronger. And as your identity strengthens, excellence becomes less about occasional achievement and more about the way you live each day. The path to an extraordinary life is already within your reach. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Raise your standards before you raise your goals. Your future rarely rises above the standards you accept today. Most people believe success begins with setting bigger goals. They write ambitious plans, create vision boards, promise themselves that this year will finally be different. For a few weeks, motivation feels unstoppable, then reality returns. Old habits quietly reappear. Discipline fades. Excuses become easier than action. Eventually, the goals that once felt exciting become forgotten. This cycle repeats so often that many people begin believing they simply lack talent, motivation, or willpower. But the problem rarely lies in the goal itself. The problem lies beneath it. Goals tell you where you want to go. Standards determine whether you are willing to do what is required to get there. That is why extraordinary people rarely become extraordinary by dreaming bigger. They become extraordinary by expecting more from themselves every single day. Success begins long before achievement becomes visible. It begins with the standards you refuse to compromise. The core principle is simple. Standards determine behavior. Behavior determines results. Psychology provides a powerful explanation for why this is true. One of the strongest influences on human behavior is identity-based habits. People naturally act in ways that reinforce the identity they believe they possess. Someone who identifies as a healthy person does not exercise only when they feel motivated. They exercise because it reflects who they believe they are. Someone who identifies as a lifelong learner continues reading and improving even when no one is watching. The habit follows the identity. Extraordinary people understand this relationship. Instead of asking, "What goal do I want to achieve?" they ask, "Who do I need to become?" Once identity changes, behavior begins changing naturally. Closely connected to identity is your self-concept, the collection of beliefs you hold about yourself. Your self-concept quietly shapes every decision you make. If you believe you are someone who always quits when life becomes difficult, your behavior will eventually support that belief. If you believe you are someone who keeps promises to yourself, your actions gradually begin reflecting that identity. This is why two people with identical opportunities often produce completely different results. Their abilities may be similar, their resources may be similar, but their self-image creates different expectations, and those expectations create different behaviors. Another psychological force that shapes excellence is cognitive dissonance. This occurs when your behavior conflicts with your identity or personal standards. Imagine someone who genuinely believes they are disciplined but repeatedly procrastinates. That inconsistency creates psychological discomfort. Eventually, one of two things happens. Either they lower their standards to match their behavior, or they improve their behavior to match their standards. Ordinary people often resolve this discomfort by adjusting their expectations. Exceptional people resolve it by adjusting their actions. They protect their standards instead of negotiating with them. This leads to another defining characteristic of extraordinary individuals: personal responsibility. They do not spend their lives blaming circumstances, bad luck, difficult people, or imperfect conditions. They recognize that while many events remain outside their control, their response never is. Responsibility gives them power because it shifts attention away from excuses and toward action. Every decision becomes another opportunity to reinforce the standards they have chosen. This mindset creates consistency long after motivation disappears. The difference between ordinary and exceptional thinking becomes clear. An ordinary person sets exciting goals. An exceptional person raises personal standards. Goals are temporary. Standards become permanent. Goals often inspire action for a short time. Standards guide behavior every day. This transformation can be understood through a simple framework called the standard ladder. Identity shapes your standards. Your standards influence the choices you make. Those choices become daily habits. Those habits produce your results. The sequence looks like this: identity to standards, to choices, to habits, to results. Most people attempt to change the final step while ignoring everything that comes before it. Extraordinary people begin at the top. They transform their identity first. The results eventually follow. We see this principle in the lives of Olympic athletes. The world often notices them only during competition. What it rarely sees are the countless ordinary days that created extraordinary performances. Olympic athletes maintain elite training standards even when no competition is approaching. They wake up early, follow disciplined nutrition, complete demanding practice sessions, protect their recovery, refine the smallest details of their performance. Why? Because excellence has become part of their identity. Their standards do not depend on the calendar. They remain committed whether anyone is watching or not. Competition simply reveals the standards they have already been living. The same principle applies to every area of life. Exceptional leaders do not become trustworthy only during important meetings. They practice integrity every day. Outstanding entrepreneurs do not become disciplined only when opportunities appear. They consistently prepare before opportunities arrive. Extraordinary relationships are not built through occasional grand gestures. They are built through daily standards of honesty, respect, patience, and reliability. Extraordinary results are simply ordinary behaviors repeated at an extraordinary standard. As you finish this chapter, take a moment to complete one simple exercise. Write down 5 standards that define the person you intend to become. Not goals, standards. Ask yourself, What behaviors will become non-negotiable regardless of how I feel? Perhaps one standard is keeping every promise you make to yourself. Perhaps another is reading every day, exercising consistently, speaking with integrity, showing up prepared. Choose standards that reflect the identity you want to build rather than the achievements you hope to collect. Remember this thought. Your life changes when your standards become non-negotiable. Before moving forward, reflect on one final question. What standard have you been lowering simply to stay comfortable? Your answer may reveal the very habit that has been limiting your potential. And once your standards begin rising, something else becomes necessary. Higher standards naturally demand stronger discipline. Chapter 2. Master discipline before motivation. Motivation gets you started. Discipline makes sure you never have to start over. Most people wait until they feel inspired before taking action. They tell themselves they will begin exercising when they feel motivated. They will read when they have more energy. They will start the business when confidence arrives. They will pursue their dreams when the timing finally feels right. Unfortunately, motivation is one of the least reliable forces in human psychology. Some days it feels limitless, other days it disappears without warning. If your progress depends on how you feel, your results will always rise and fall with your emotions. Extraordinary people understand something different. They appreciate motivation, but they never depend on it. Instead, they build something far more dependable. Discipline. Discipline is the ability to keep moving even after excitement fades. It is choosing the right action when comfort offers an easier alternative. While ordinary people ask, "Do I feel like doing this today?" Exceptional people ask, "What does the person I want to become do today?" That simple shift separates temporary success from lasting excellence. One of the strongest psychological principles behind discipline is delayed gratification. Human beings naturally seek immediate rewards. Our brains are designed to conserve energy and pursue pleasure. Choosing comfort today often feels easier than investing in a better tomorrow. Yet countless studies have shown that people who consistently delay short-term gratification for meaningful, long-term rewards tend to achieve greater success across health, education, finances, relationships, and personal development. Extraordinary people are not immune to temptation. They simply become better at choosing future benefits over present comfort. Every disciplined decision strengthens that ability. Closely connected to this is habit formation. At first, discipline requires conscious effort. You remind yourself to wake up early, exercise regularly, study consistently, complete important work before distractions. These actions can feel difficult because the brain is building new neural pathways. With repetition, however, those behaviors gradually become automatic. What once required determination eventually becomes routine. That is why disciplined people often appear effortlessly consistent. They are not relying on extraordinary willpower every day. They are relying on habits they have carefully built over time. Another essential element is self-control. Many people think self-control means constantly fighting temptation. In reality, emotionally and mentally strong people reduce the number of decisions they need to make. They create environments that support good behavior. They prepare in advance. They remove unnecessary distractions. They establish routines that make the right choice easier than the wrong one. Discipline is not about making life harder. It is about making success more predictable. Psychologists also describe a process known as reinforcement learning. Every behavior followed by a rewarding outcome becomes more likely to be repeated. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, your brain receives evidence that you are reliable. That evidence strengthens future behavior. Miss one workout and very little changes. Keep dozens of promises to yourself over months and years, and something much more valuable begins to develop. Trust, not other people's trust, your own. This creates a powerful cycle that can be understood through the discipline engine. It begins with a promise to exercise, to read, to practice, to show up. When you honor that promise, it becomes action. Repeated action becomes consistency. Consistency builds self-trust because you repeatedly prove that your words and behavior align. Self-trust naturally develops into confidence. Not confidence built on positive thinking alone, but confidence earned through repeated evidence. The sequence is simple: promise to action to consistency to self-trust to confidence. Many people chase confidence before taking action. Extraordinary people understand that confidence is usually the result of disciplined behavior, not the starting point. This principle is clearly visible in elite military training. Military organizations cannot rely on motivation during moments of extreme pressure. Soldiers may experience exhaustion, uncertainty, fear, and overwhelming stress. Performance cannot depend on how inspired someone feels in those moments. Instead, training focuses on building automatic discipline. Essential skills are repeated until they become second nature. Procedures are practiced again and again until correct responses require very little conscious thought. When real pressure arrives, disciplined habits take over. Reliable performance becomes possible because consistency has already been established long before the challenge appeared. The same principle applies to every extraordinary life. Successful entrepreneurs continue working when excitement fades. Elite athletes continue training after the applause disappears. Great writers continue writing when inspiration feels absent. Strong leaders continue making wise decisions during difficult seasons. They are not driven by endless motivation. They are sustained by disciplined habits. The encouraging truth is that discipline is not reserved for a gifted few. It is a skill, and like every skill, it grows stronger with practice. Each promise you keep strengthens your belief that you are someone who follows through. Each disciplined choice makes the next one slightly easier. Over time, consistency stops feeling like effort. It becomes part of your identity. As you finish this chapter, choose one meaningful promise you can keep every day for the next 30 days. Keep it realistic. Keep it measurable. Most importantly, keep it consistently. Do not underestimate the power of small promises honored repeatedly. They become the foundation of extraordinary character. Remember this thought: discipline is motivation that learned to keep its promises. Before moving forward, ask yourself one important question. Where in your life have you been waiting for motivation instead of building discipline? The answer may reveal the habit that has been holding your potential back. Because once discipline becomes part of your identity, you stop depending on temporary feelings. You begin relying on something far more powerful: your own commitment. Chapter 3. Think beyond the crowd. The easiest opinions to adopt are usually the ones that require the least amount of thinking. From the moment we are born, we begin learning from the people around us. Our families shape our beliefs. Schools influence the way we solve problems. Friends affect our decisions. Society quietly teaches us what success should look like, what risks are acceptable, and what paths are considered safe. Much of this guidance is valuable, but there comes a point in every extraordinary life when borrowed beliefs are no longer enough. Growth requires independent thinking. History's greatest innovators, leaders, scientists, entrepreneurs, and creators rarely changed the world by agreeing with everyone else. They asked questions others ignored. They challenged assumptions others accepted. They looked beyond conventional wisdom and considered possibilities that most people never explored. This is one of the defining characteristics of exceptional people. They are willing to think for themselves. The objective is not to disagree with everyone. It is to become someone who values truth more than popularity, because extraordinary lives are rarely built by following the crowd. They are built by understanding when to walk a different path. One of the greatest psychological obstacles to independent thinking is groupthink. Groupthink occurs when the desire for agreement becomes stronger than the desire for accurate thinking. People remain silent even when they notice problems. They accept ideas simply because everyone else seems to support them. They avoid asking difficult questions because they fear criticism or rejection. This tendency is deeply human. We naturally seek belonging. Our brains often interpret social acceptance as safety, but extraordinary people recognize that agreement does not automatically equal truth. They understand that progress often begins with the courage to question accepted ideas. Closely connected to this is confirmation bias. The human mind naturally looks for information that supports existing beliefs while ignoring evidence that challenges them. If you already believe something to be true, your brain quietly notices examples that reinforce your opinion and overlooks information that contradicts it. Without realizing it, we create mental echo chambers. Extraordinary thinkers deliberately interrupt this pattern. They actively seek different perspectives. They ask, "What evidence might prove me wrong?" Rather than protecting their opinions, they test them. Their confidence comes not from always being right, but from being willing to learn. Another essential skill is critical thinking. Critical thinking is the ability to evaluate ideas objectively before accepting or rejecting them. Instead of reacting emotionally, critical thinkers gather evidence. They separate facts from assumptions. They distinguish opinions from reality. They ask thoughtful questions before making important decisions. This does not make them cynical. It makes them curious. Curiosity opens doors that certainty often keeps closed. The more willing you are to think carefully, the less likely you are to become controlled by popular opinion or emotional reactions. This naturally develops into autonomy. Autonomy is the ability to guide your life according to your values rather than external pressure. It does not mean rejecting advice. It means taking responsibility for your own decisions. Extraordinary people listen carefully to others. They seek wisdom from mentors. They remain open to constructive feedback, but they never surrender ownership of their thinking. Ultimately, they understand that they must live with the consequences of their choices. Therefore, they choose to think independently before deciding. This process can be understood through the independent mind model. It begins by observing. Pay attention to what is happening without immediately accepting the first explanation. Then question. Ask why things are done a certain way. Challenge assumptions respectfully. Next, think. Examine the evidence. Consider different perspectives. Reflect carefully before reaching conclusions. Then decide. Choose the path that aligns with reason, values, and long-term purpose. Finally, own the consequences. Accept responsibility for both success and failure. The sequence is simple. Observe, arrow, question, arrow, think, arrow, decide, arrow. Own the consequences. Most people skip the middle steps. They observe and immediately imitate. Exceptional people pause long enough to think. That pause often changes the direction of their lives. This principle is evident in the world of entrepreneurship. Many successful entrepreneurs begin by questioning assumptions that everyone else accepts. While others see an established industry, they notice an unmet need. While competitors follow familiar methods, they ask whether a simpler, faster, or more valuable solution exists. Some of the world's most successful businesses were created because someone refused to accept the phrase, "That's just how things have always been done." They observed, they questioned, They thought independently, then they acted. Not every unconventional idea succeeds, but every meaningful innovation begins with someone willing to think beyond conventional thinking. The same principle applies to your own life. Perhaps there are beliefs you have accepted without examining them. Perhaps you have limited yourself because of opinions inherited from other people. Maybe you have been following expectations that no longer reflect the person you want to become. Extraordinary growth often begins with one honest question. Do I truly believe this, or have I simply repeated what I have always heard? Questions like that create freedom. They allow you to build a life based on conviction rather than conformity. As you finish this chapter, choose one belief, habit, or assumption you have never seriously questioned. Take time to examine it honestly. Read different perspectives, ask better questions, think independently before deciding whether it deserves a place in your future. Remember this thought: extraordinary lives begin where borrowed opinions end. Before moving forward, reflect on one final question. What belief have you accepted simply because everyone around you believes it? Your answer may become the beginning of your greatest breakthrough. Because once you learn to think independently, you become capable of seeing opportunities that the crowd will never notice. Chapter 4. Become emotionally unshakable. Your greatest strength is not avoiding pressure, it is remaining steady within it. Life has a way of testing us when we least expect it. A project suddenly falls apart. A trusted relationship becomes strained. Unexpected criticism catches us off guard. A single phone call changes the direction of an ordinary day. In these moments, knowledge alone is not enough. Character takes over. Many people believe emotional strength means never feeling fear, frustration, or disappointment. But that is not emotional resilience. Emotionally unshakable people experience the same emotions as everyone else. Their advantage is not what they feel, it is how they respond. While ordinary people allow pressure to dictate their behavior, extraordinary people use pressure as an opportunity to demonstrate their character. That is why emotional resilience has become one of the defining qualities of exceptional individuals. They understand that success is not measured only by what happens during calm seasons. It is revealed by who they become during difficult ones. One of the most important psychological skills behind emotional resilience is emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is the ability to understand, manage, and direct your emotions without allowing them to overwhelm your judgment. It does not mean suppressing your feelings or pretending everything is fine. Instead, it means recognizing emotions as valuable information while refusing to let them become the decision maker. Fear may tell you that something matters. Frustration may reveal that expectations have been challenged. Disappointment may highlight what you truly value. Emotions deserve attention. They simply should not have complete authority. Closely connected to this is the brain's amygdala response. The amygdala acts as an early warning system, constantly scanning for potential threats. When it detects danger, whether physical or emotional, it reacts quickly. Your heart rate increases, your breathing changes, your attention narrows. The body prepares for immediate action. This response is remarkably effective in genuine emergencies. However, modern life presents challenges that rarely require instant reactions. A difficult conversation, an unexpected setback, a stressful meeting. These situations often demand thoughtful judgment rather than impulsive action. Extraordinary people learn to recognize when the amygdala is sounding an unnecessary alarm. Instead of reacting immediately, they create space for reason to return. This is where cognitive reappraisal becomes a powerful tool. Cognitive reappraisal is the ability to reinterpret a situation before deciding how to respond. Imagine receiving critical feedback at work. One interpretation might be, "I'm failing." Another might be, "This is valuable information that can help me improve." The situation remains exactly the same, only the meaning changes. And when meaning changes, emotional reactions often change with it. The most resilient people are not those who avoid challenges. They are those who become skilled at changing the way they interpret them. Over time, this develops into genuine resilience. Resilience is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to recover, adapt, and continue moving forward despite adversity. Resilient people still experience setbacks. They still encounter uncertainty. They still have difficult days. The difference is that temporary difficulties do not become permanent identities. Failure becomes feedback. Obstacles become lessons. Pressure becomes preparation. These qualities come together through emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand your own emotions, recognize their influence, and respond in ways that align with your values rather than your impulses. It allows you to remain calm without becoming passive, confident without becoming arrogant, patient without becoming indecisive. Emotionally intelligent people understand that every response either strengthens or weakens the person they are becoming. One practical way to apply these ideas is through the emotional control loop. When pressure appears, begin by pause. Resist the urge to react immediately. Even one deep breath creates valuable space. Next, observe. Notice what you are feeling without judging yourself. Ask what emotion is present and what may have triggered it. Then reframe. Look at the situation from a broader perspective. Ask yourself whether there is another interpretation that is more balanced, constructive, or helpful. After that, respond. Choose the action that reflects your values rather than your temporary emotions. Finally, grow. Reflect on what the experience taught you so that the next challenge becomes easier to handle. The sequence is simple. Pause arrow, observe arrow, reframe arrow, respond arrow, grow. Each step strengthens emotional resilience and makes wise responses more natural over time. A powerful example of this mindset can be seen in airline pilots. Commercial pilots operate in environments where pressure can become intense without warning. Unexpected weather, technical alerts, rapidly changing conditions. In these moments, emotional panic can compromise safety. That is why pilots are trained to remain calm, follow established procedures, evaluate information carefully, and make deliberate decisions under pressure. Their goal is not to eliminate emotion. It is to prevent emotion from overriding sound judgment. The safest pilot is not the one who never feels stress. It is the one who is trained to respond wisely despite it. The same principle applies to every area of life. Leaders who remain composed inspire confidence. Parents who stay calm provide security. Entrepreneurs who think clearly during uncertainty make better decisions. Professionals who regulate their emotions earn trust when challenges arise. Extraordinary people are not extraordinary because life gives them fewer difficult moments. They are extraordinary because they have learned how to navigate those moments with greater wisdom. As you finish this chapter, think about a recent situation that triggered a strong emotional reaction. Walk yourself through the emotional control loop. Where could you have paused? What emotion were you experiencing? How might you have reframed the situation? What response would better reflect the person you want to become? Every difficult moment is another opportunity to strengthen emotional resilience. Remember this thought. Your emotions should inform your decisions, not control them. Before moving forward, reflect on one final question. When pressure appears, do your emotions lead your decisions or do your values? The answer will reveal how emotionally unshakable you have become. Because once you master your emotional responses, you become capable of handling challenges that once seemed impossible. Chapter 5. Protect your time like your future depends on it. Every day, your future competes with your distractions. Every person receives the same 24 hours. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary lives is rarely found in having more time. It is found in using time differently. Some people spend their days reacting to whatever demands their attention. Notifications interrupt their focus. Meetings fill their calendars. Small tasks consume their energy. By evening, they have been busy all day, yet made very little meaningful progress. Others approach time differently. They understand that every hour is an investment. Instead of allowing urgency to dictate their schedule, they intentionally choose what deserves their attention. Over weeks, months, and years, those choices compound into extraordinary results. This is why exceptional people protect their time with remarkable discipline. They understand that time is the one resource that cannot be recovered once it has been spent. Money can be earned again, skills can be learned, mistakes can be corrected. Time only moves in one direction. That is why protecting your time is ultimately about protecting your future. One of the greatest psychological challenges to managing time well is decision fatigue. Every decision you make consumes a small amount of mental energy. What should you work on first? Should you check your email now or later? Should you attend another meeting? Should you continue scrolling or begin your most important task? Individually, these decisions seem insignificant. Collectively, they quietly drain your ability to think clearly. By the time many people finally reach the work that matters most, they have already exhausted much of their mental energy. Extraordinary people reduce unnecessary decisions. They establish routines. They plan their priorities in advance. They simplify recurring choices so that more mental energy remains available for meaningful work. They understand that protecting attention is often more valuable than managing time alone. Another important psychological principle is opportunity cost. Every yes automatically becomes a no to something else. An hour spent on low-value work is an hour unavailable for learning, building meaningful relationships, improving your health, or creating something valuable. Time management is therefore not simply about organizing your schedule. It is about making intentional trade-offs. Every choice carries a hidden cost. Exceptional people ask themselves, if I choose this, what am I choosing not to do? That single question often changes the quality of their decisions. Closely connected to this is time perception. Human beings naturally experience time differently depending on how they use it. Hours disappear quickly when consumed by distractions. Yet meaningful work often creates a deeper sense of fulfillment, even when it requires greater effort. Ironically, the activities that produce the greatest long-term rewards rarely feel urgent in the moment. Reading, learning, planning, exercising, building relationships, developing new skills. Because these activities do not demand immediate attention, they are often postponed. Extraordinary people reverse this pattern. They give their best hours to their highest priorities rather than their loudest interruptions. Another essential skill is attention management. Time itself cannot be controlled. Attention can. You can spend 2 uninterrupted hours creating meaningful progress, or spend the same 2 hours constantly switching between emails, messages, meetings, and social media without accomplishing anything significant. Every interruption forces the brain to refocus. That constant switching reduces the quality of your thinking and slows your progress. Extraordinary people understand that deep focus is one of the most valuable competitive advantages in the modern world. They intentionally create environments where concentration becomes easier. Phones are silenced, notifications are reduced, important work receives uninterrupted attention, because where attention goes, meaningful results often follow. These principles come together through the time investment formula. It begins with priorities. Identify the few activities that create the greatest long-term value. Next comes focus. Give those priorities your full attention instead of dividing your energy across countless distractions. Focus leads to execution. Ideas become valuable only when they are consistently acted upon. Finally, repeated execution produces compounding results. Small improvements, repeated day after day, eventually create outcomes that appear extraordinary from the outside. The sequence is simple: priorities to focus, to execution, to compounding results. Most people attempt to improve their results while neglecting the choices that create them. Exceptional people begin by protecting the hours that matter most. A practical example can be seen in many highly productive chief executives. Although their responsibilities are enormous, the most effective leaders rarely allow their calendars to become controlled by constant meetings or endless interruptions. Instead, they deliberately schedule uninterrupted blocks of time for high-impact work. Strategic thinking, long-term planning, important decisions, creative problem-solving. These activities generate far greater value than reacting to every incoming request. Their calendars reflect their priorities rather than other people's urgency. They understand that if they fail to control their schedule, someone else will gladly do it for them. The same principle applies whether you are leading an organization, building a business, studying for an examination, or developing a new skill. Extraordinary progress rarely comes from finding more time. It comes from giving your best time to your best work. As you finish this chapter, take a close look at how you spend a typical day. Identify the 3 activities that contribute most to the future you want to build. Then ask yourself whether your calendar reflects those priorities. If not, begin making small adjustments. Protect 1 uninterrupted hour each day for your highest value work. Treat that time as an appointment with your future. Over weeks and months, those protected hours will accumulate into remarkable progress. Remember this thought: where your time goes, your future follows. Before moving forward, reflect on one final question. If someone examined your calendar for the past month, would they clearly see the future you say you want to create? Your answer may reveal the gap between your intentions and your daily actions, because extraordinary lives are not built by wishing for more time. They are built by honoring the time you already have. Chapter 6. Learn faster than everyone else. The greatest advantage in a changing world is not what you already know. It is how quickly you can learn what you do not know. Every generation produces people who seem to move ahead faster than everyone else. They adapt to new technology, acquire valuable skills, solve increasingly complex problems. And while others struggle to keep pace with change, they continue growing. Many people assume these individuals are simply more intelligent. But intelligence alone rarely explains extraordinary success. What truly separates exceptional people is their willingness to remain lifelong students. They understand that knowledge becomes outdated, industries evolve, and opportunities belong to those who learn faster than change itself. In today's world, your ability to learn has become one of your greatest competitive advantages. Money can be lost, careers can change, entire industries can disappear. But the ability to learn allows you to rebuild, adapt, and create new opportunities again and again. That is why extraordinary people never see learning as something that ends with school. They see it as a lifelong habit. One of the most remarkable discoveries in modern psychology is neuroplasticity. For many years, scientists believed the adult brain remained largely fixed after childhood. We now know the opposite is true. The brain continually changes in response to experience. Every new skill you practice strengthens neural pathways. Every concept you understand creates new connections. Every challenge you overcome teaches your brain to perform more effectively in the future. Learning literally reshapes the brain. This means your current abilities are not permanent limits. They are simply your current starting point. Extraordinary people understand this. Instead of asking, "Am I talented enough?" they ask, "What can I learn next?" That question opens doors that self-doubt often keeps closed. Learning becomes even more powerful through deliberate practice. Many people repeat the same activity for years without significantly improving. Practice alone does not guarantee progress. Improvement comes from practicing with intention. Deliberate practice focuses on weaknesses rather than strengths. It requires concentration, immediate feedback, and a willingness to make mistakes. Instead of simply repeating what already feels comfortable, extraordinary people intentionally challenge themselves just beyond their current level of ability. Growth happens at the edge of comfort. Each mistake becomes valuable information rather than evidence of failure. Closely connected to this is the growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe abilities are largely predetermined. Success proves intelligence, failure proves limitation. As a result, they often avoid situations where they might struggle. People with a growth mindset think differently. They believe skills can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. Challenges become opportunities. Feedback becomes guidance. Failure becomes part of the learning process rather than the end of it. This mindset creates resilience because progress becomes more important than perfection. Extraordinary people are not discouraged by what they cannot do today. They are excited by what they may be capable of tomorrow. Another essential process is memory consolidation. Learning does not happen only while you are studying. The brain continues organizing and strengthening new information afterward. Reflection, repetition, quality sleep, and practical application all help transform short-term knowledge into long-term understanding. This is why reading a book once is rarely enough to master its ideas. Knowledge becomes powerful only when it is reviewed, practiced, and applied consistently. Information may fill the mind. Application transforms the person. These principles work together through the learning flywheel. Everything begins with curiosity. Curiosity encourages you to ask questions instead of assuming you already know the answers. Curiosity naturally leads to learning. You read, observe, listen, and explore new ideas. Learning must then become practice. Knowledge without action quickly fades. Practice reveals strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for improvement. Practice produces feedback. Feedback shows what is working and what still requires attention. Finally, repeated learning and refinement lead to mastery. Mastery is never a final destination. It creates greater curiosity, beginning the cycle once again. The sequence is simple: curiosity to learning to practice to feedback to mastery. The people who improve the fastest are not necessarily the smartest. They are the ones who keep the flywheel turning. A powerful example can be found in world-class chess grandmasters. To an observer, their remarkable ability may appear to come from natural brilliance alone. In reality, much of their improvement comes from carefully analyzing mistakes. After every important match, they review critical decisions, identify weak patterns, and study alternative strategies. They spend as much time learning from losses as celebrating victories. Each mistake becomes a lesson. Each lesson improves future decisions. Over thousands of games, those small improvements accumulate into extraordinary expertise. Their success is built not only on talent, but on an unwavering commitment to learning. The same principle applies to every profession and every stage of life. Exceptional leaders remain curious. Outstanding entrepreneurs continue studying their industries. Elite athletes constantly refine technique. Successful professionals seek feedback instead of avoiding it. They understand that the moment learning stops, growth begins slowing down. As you finish this chapter, choose one skill that would have the greatest positive impact on your future. Commit to learning something about that skill every day. Read for 20 minutes. Take notes. Practice deliberately. Ask for feedback. Reflect on what you have learned. Do not focus on becoming an expert overnight. Focus on becoming slightly better than you were yesterday. Small improvements repeated consistently create extraordinary results over time. Remember this thought. Learning compounds faster than talent. Before moving forward, reflect on one final question. Are you investing more time proving what you already know, or learning what could transform your future? Your answer may determine how far your potential ultimately reaches, because extraordinary people are not defined by the knowledge they possess today. They are defined by their commitment to becoming wiser tomorrow. Chapter 7. Make consistency your superpower. Success is rarely built by what you do once. It is built by what you refuse to stop doing. People often admire extraordinary achievements while overlooking the ordinary actions that created them. They notice the best-selling book, the thriving business, the championship trophy, the remarkable career. What they rarely see are the thousands of quiet days that came before, the early mornings, the repeated practice, the small improvements, the countless moments when progress seemed almost invisible. Extraordinary results often appear dramatic. The process that creates them is usually anything but. It is consistent. Many people overestimate the power of intense effort and underestimate the power of repeated effort. They believe one extraordinary week will compensate for months of inconsistency. One motivational burst will erase years of procrastination. One ambitious decision will transform an ordinary life. Real transformation rarely works that way. Extraordinary people understand that consistency always outperforms occasional intensity. They know that success is not built on isolated moments of excellence. It is built on repeated acts of discipline that become impossible to ignore over time. One of the most powerful psychological principles behind consistency is behavioral reinforcement. Every action you repeat teaches your brain something about who you are. When you consistently exercise, your brain begins recognizing movement as a normal part of daily life. When you read every day, learning becomes expected rather than optional. When you repeatedly keep promises to yourself, your mind strengthens the belief that you are reliable. Every repeated behavior reinforces the likelihood of repeating it again. Consistency creates familiarity. Familiarity creates permanence. This explains why small actions often become surprisingly powerful. Closely connected to this is the principle of compounding. Most people associate compounding with money, yet its greatest impact often appears in human behavior. One extra page read each day, one thoughtful conversation, one deliberate practice session, one healthy decision. Each action appears insignificant by itself, but repeated hundreds of times, these tiny improvements produce remarkable transformation. Progress rarely feels dramatic while it is happening. It becomes obvious only after enough time has passed. Extraordinary people trust this invisible process. They remain committed even when immediate results are difficult to see. Another important concept is the psychology of habit loops. Every habit follows a repeating cycle. A cue triggers behavior. The behavior leads to a reward. The reward encourages repetition. Over time, the cycle becomes increasingly automatic. This is why consistency becomes easier with repetition. What once required determination gradually becomes routine. The goal is not to force yourself forever. The goal is to repeat the behavior until it becomes part of your everyday life. When that happens, discipline begins transforming into identity. This leads directly to identity formation. Earlier in this audiobook, we explored the idea that identity shapes behavior. Consistency strengthens that identity. Every time you complete a meaningful action, you cast another vote for the person you are becoming. You are not simply writing. You are becoming a writer. You are not simply exercising. You are becoming a healthy person. You are not simply learning. You are becoming someone who grows every day. Identity is not created by one extraordinary achievement. It is built through ordinary actions repeated consistently. This entire process can be understood through the consistency chain. Everything begins with tiny actions. Small behaviors remove the pressure of perfection and make starting easier. Tiny actions become daily repetition. The more often you repeat them, the more natural they become. Daily repetition creates momentum. Progress begins accelerating because consistency reduces resistance. Momentum strengthens your identity. You begin seeing yourself as someone who naturally follows through. That identity eventually produces extraordinary results. The sequence is simple: tiny actions to daily repetition, to momentum, to identity, to extraordinary results. Many people focus only on the final step. Exceptional people protect the first one, because they understand that extraordinary results are simply the natural consequence of extraordinary consistency. A powerful example can be seen in successful authors. Many aspiring writers wait until inspiration appears before beginning. If they do not feel creative, they postpone the work. Days become weeks, weeks become months. The manuscript remains unfinished. Prolific authors take a different approach. They create a writing schedule and honor it regardless of how inspired they feel. Some write 500 words each morning. Others dedicate a fixed number of hours each day. They trust consistency more than emotion. Not every writing session produces brilliant ideas. Some days feel difficult, others feel effortless. Yet by continuing to write, they gradually produce books that seemed impossible when viewed one page at a time. Their success is not built on extraordinary inspiration. It is built on extraordinary consistency. The same principle applies to every meaningful goal. Businesses grow through consistent service. Relationships strengthen through consistent attention. Health improves through consistent habits. Knowledge expands through consistent learning. Confidence develops through consistently keeping promises to yourself. The extraordinary is almost always hidden inside the ordinary. As you finish this chapter, choose one small habit that aligns with the future you want to create. Make it simple enough that you can repeat it every day without relying on motivation. Then protect that habit with unwavering consistency. Do not measure your success only by immediate outcomes. Measure it by the number of days you keep showing up. Because every day you remain consistent, you strengthen both your habits and your identity. Remember this thought: consistency quietly accomplishes what intensity rarely sustains. Before moving forward, reflect on one final question. What small habit, repeated every day for the next year, could completely change your future? Your answer may seem surprisingly ordinary. That is exactly the point. Because extraordinary lives are rarely built through extraordinary moments. They are built through ordinary actions repeated with extraordinary consistency. Chapter 8. Surround yourself with excellence. The people and places around you quietly shape the person you become. Most people believe success is entirely a matter of personal determination. They focus on building stronger habits, improving discipline, developing confidence, working harder than everyone else. These qualities certainly matter, but there is another influence that often goes unnoticed: your environment. Whether you realize it or not, your surroundings are constantly influencing your thoughts, expectations, decisions, and behavior. The conversations you hear, the standards people accept, the books you read, the people you spend time with, the spaces where you work, even the digital content you consume every day. Together, they create an invisible force that quietly shapes your future. This is why extraordinary people rarely rely on willpower alone. They intentionally build environments that make excellence feel natural. They understand that when your environment consistently supports growth, personal development becomes significantly easier. One of the strongest psychological explanations for this is social contagion. Human behavior spreads remarkably like emotion. Optimism spreads, negativity spreads, discipline spreads, complacency spreads. The attitudes, habits, and expectations of the people around you gradually influence your own. Spend enough time with people who constantly seek improvement, and growth begins feeling normal. Spend enough time with people who accept excuses, and lowering your standards gradually becomes easier. Extraordinary people understand that success is rarely achieved in complete isolation. They carefully choose the environments that reinforce the person they want to become. Closely connected to this are mirror neurons. Neuroscientists believe these specialized brain cells help us learn by observing the behavior of others. When you watch someone perform a skill, solve a problem, or respond calmly under pressure, your brain begins mentally rehearsing similar patterns. This natural process explains why role models are so powerful. Excellence is often learned before it is consciously understood. The people you observe most frequently gradually influence how you think, communicate, and behave. That is why surrounding yourself with high standards quietly raises your own. Another important influence is peer influence. Many people associate peer pressure with adolescence. In reality, it continues throughout life. Adults are influenced by colleagues, entrepreneurs by other entrepreneurs, athletes by teammates, leaders by the cultures they help create. People naturally adapt to the expectations of the groups they belong to. If everyone around you values growth, accountability, and integrity, those behaviors begin feeling ordinary. If mediocrity becomes the accepted standard, excellence eventually feels unusual. Extraordinary people intentionally seek communities that challenge them to become better rather than simply making them feel comfortable. This naturally leads to environmental psychology. Environmental psychology explores how physical surroundings influence behavior and decision-making. Your environment is always communicating expectations. A cluttered workspace often encourages distraction. A quiet reading corner encourages learning. A well-organized schedule supports focus. A phone filled with constant notifications competes for your attention. The environment either supports your goals or silently works against them. Instead of depending entirely on self-control, extraordinary people design environments that make productive behavior the easiest choice. Their surroundings become partners in their success. These principles come together through the environment effect. Everything begins with your environment. The people, places, and influences surrounding you establish certain expectations. Those expectations shape daily behavior. Repeated behavior gradually forms your identity. That identity ultimately determines your achievement. The sequence is simple: environment to expectations to behavior to identity to achievement. Many people attempt to change only their behavior while leaving their environment unchanged. Exceptional people understand that lasting transformation often begins by changing what surrounds them. When the environment improves, better behavior becomes far more sustainable. A powerful example can be found in professional sports teams. The most successful organizations do more than recruit talented athletes. They build cultures where excellence becomes the standard. Every training session reflects discipline. Every teammate is expected to prepare thoroughly. Accountability is shared. Effort is celebrated. Improvement is constant. New players quickly discover that high performance is not optional. It is simply how the team operates. Over time, individual behavior rises to meet collective expectations. The culture itself becomes one of the team's greatest competitive advantages. The same principle applies far beyond sport. A motivated student grows faster when surrounded by curious learners. A business professional develops more quickly among people who value excellence and integrity. A writer improves by joining communities where consistent creation is normal. Even your home environment can reinforce the future you want to build. The books on your shelves, the conversations around your dinner table, the media you consume, the people whose advice you seek. Each influence quietly shapes your thinking. As you finish this chapter, take an honest inventory of your environment. Ask yourself whether the people, habits, routines, and spaces surrounding you are supporting the person you want to become. Identify one influence that consistently pulls you away from your highest standards. Then identify one new influence that could move you closer to the future you envision. Small environmental changes often produce surprisingly large personal transformations. Remember this thought. Your environment silently negotiates your future every day. Before moving forward, reflect on one final question. Does your environment encourage the person you are becoming, or the person you are trying to leave behind? Your answer may explain more about your future than your ambitions ever could, because extraordinary people do not simply hope to become better. They intentionally surround themselves with the people, places, and expectations that make excellence inevitable. Chapter 9. Solve bigger problems. The size of your success is often determined by the size of the problems you are willing to solve. Many people spend their lives asking one question: how can I become more successful? Extraordinary people ask a different one: how can I become more useful? This subtle shift changes everything. Success is rarely something that can be chased directly. It is usually a byproduct of creating value for others. The entrepreneur who builds a thriving company solves problems for customers. The teacher who changes lives solves problems for students. The doctor who restores health solves problems for patients. The engineer who designs safer technology solves problems for society. The artist who inspires millions solves emotional problems through creativity. In every field, the individuals who create the greatest impact are those who consistently solve meaningful problems. That is why extraordinary lives are built less on personal achievement and more on valuable contribution. One of the strongest psychological forces behind this principle is purpose. Purpose gives effort direction. Without purpose, work often feels exhausting because every task appears disconnected. With purpose, even difficult challenges become meaningful. Purpose reminds you that your actions matter beyond your own immediate comfort. It encourages perseverance when results are slow and motivation begins fading. Extraordinary people rarely wake up driven only by money, recognition, or status. Those rewards may arrive later. What drives them first is the belief that their work improves something for someone else. Purpose transforms ordinary work into meaningful contribution. Another essential quality is creativity. Many people mistakenly believe creativity belongs only to artists, musicians, or designers. In reality, creativity is the ability to see possibilities that others overlook. Every meaningful solution begins with creative thinking. How can this process become simpler? How can this experience become better? How can this challenge be approached differently? Creative people ask better questions before they search for better answers. They remain curious about inefficiencies that others have accepted as normal. Extraordinary innovation often begins with noticing what everyone else has stopped noticing. This perspective becomes even stronger through systems thinking. Most people focus only on individual events. Systems thinkers look for patterns. Instead of asking why one problem occurred today, they ask what repeatedly causes similar problems. Instead of fixing symptoms, they search for root causes. This approach produces longer-lasting solutions because it addresses the system rather than the surface. Imagine a manager whose team consistently misses deadlines. An ordinary response might be increasing pressure. A systems thinker investigates communication, planning, workload, priorities, and processes before reaching conclusions. When the underlying system improves, the visible problems often begin disappearing naturally. Extraordinary people solve problems that remain solved because they understand the systems creating them. Closely connected to this is service orientation. Service orientation means approaching life with the mindset of creating value before seeking recognition. It does not require sacrificing ambition. Rather, it aligns ambition with contribution. People naturally trust those who genuinely improve their lives. Businesses grow because customers receive value. Leaders earn influence because people benefit from their guidance. Professionals advance because their work makes organizations stronger. The more people your solutions help, the more valuable your work becomes. Influence is rarely demanded. It is earned through consistent contribution. These principles come together through the value creation model. Everything begins with observation. Extraordinary people pay close attention to the frustrations, inefficiencies, and unmet needs around them. They notice what others ignore. Observation reveals a meaningful problem. Rather than complaining about it, they become curious about understanding it deeply. Understanding leads to a thoughtful solution. The goal is not perfection, but genuine improvement. Effective solutions create impact. People experience measurable benefits because the problem has become smaller. Repeated impact gradually develops influence. Others begin seeking your advice, trusting your judgment, and valuing your contribution. The sequence is simple: observation to problem, to solution, to impact, to influence. Many people chase influence first. Exceptional people earn influence by repeatedly creating value. Influence is not the starting point. It is the natural consequence of solving important problems well. A powerful example can be seen in many breakthrough companies. Their greatest achievements rarely came from inventing entirely new human needs. Instead, they carefully observed persistent customer frustrations, long waiting times, complicated purchasing experiences, slow communication, difficult access to information, confusing products. Rather than accepting these frustrations as inevitable, they searched for better solutions. By making everyday experiences simpler, faster, safer, or more convenient, they created enormous value. Customers rewarded those improvements with trust and loyalty. Their success grew because they solved real problems that people genuinely wanted solved. The same opportunity exists in every profession. Teachers solve confusion, doctors solve illness, designers solve usability challenges, software developers solve inefficiency, parents solve countless problems for their children every single day. Leadership itself is the continual practice of solving problems before they become crises. As your ability to solve meaningful problems grows, so does your ability to create lasting value. As you finish this chapter, take time to examine your own work and daily life. Ask yourself where people consistently experience frustration, confusion, delay, or unnecessary difficulty. Choose one problem you are capable of improving, even in a small way. Listen carefully, observe patiently, think creatively. Focus less on receiving credit and more on creating genuine value. Small solutions, repeated consistently, often become the foundation of extraordinary influence. Remember this thought: extraordinary people become valuable because they solve valuable problems. Before moving forward, reflect on one final question. If your work disappeared tomorrow, what problem would remain unsolved for the people who depend on you? Your answer reveals where your greatest opportunity lies, because extraordinary lives are not remembered simply for what they achieved. They are remembered for the problems they solved and the lives they made better along the way. Chapter 10. Handle resistance without conflict. The moment someone disagrees with you is often the moment influence truly begins. Many people view resistance as a sign of failure, a rejected proposal, an unanswered message, a difficult customer. a skeptical colleague, a family member who refuses advice. The natural reaction is to push harder, explain more, or defend ourselves with greater intensity. We assume resistance is the obstacle standing between us and agreement. Yet the most influential people see something entirely different. They understand that resistance is often not rejection. It is information. It reveals uncertainty. It exposes hidden concerns. It uncovers fears that have not yet been expressed. When you learn to interpret resistance as feedback rather than opposition, conversations begin to change. That is why resistance often reveals misunderstanding rather than opposition. People rarely resist because they enjoy conflict. More often, they resist because something important to them feels threatened, misunderstood, or unresolved. One of the most important psychological explanations for this is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance occurs when new information conflicts with existing beliefs, experiences, or identity. When that happens, the mind experiences psychological discomfort. Rather than immediately accepting new ideas, people often protect their current beliefs because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Imagine telling someone that a long-held habit is ineffective. Even if the evidence is compelling, they may defend that habit because changing it would require admitting they have been wrong. The resistance is not always directed at your idea. It is directed at the discomfort your idea creates. Recognizing this changes the purpose of persuasion. Instead of trying to defeat resistance, you begin reducing discomfort. Closely connected to this is conflict resolution. Most conflicts continue because both sides become focused on proving their own position. Each person speaks. Very few truly listen. The conversation becomes a competition rather than a search for understanding. Influential communicators refuse to enter that cycle. They understand that solving the relationship is often more important than winning the argument. They separate people from problems. Instead of viewing the other person as the obstacle, they work together to address the challenge both are facing. This shift immediately lowers defensiveness. Another powerful principle is active empathy. Earlier, we explored empathy as understanding another person's perspective. Active empathy goes further. It demonstrates that understanding through words and behavior. Instead of immediately offering solutions, influential people first acknowledge emotions. They say things such as, "I can understand why that would concern you," or "That makes sense from your perspective." Notice what these statements accomplish. They do not necessarily express agreement, they communicate respect. When people feel respected, they become far more willing to continue the conversation. Respect opens doors that arguments often close. This naturally strengthens the process of negotiation. Many people imagine negotiation as a contest where one person wins and another loses. The most effective negotiators think differently. They search beneath positions to discover interests. A position is what someone says they want. An interest is why they want it. Two people may disagree completely about a solution while sharing exactly the same underlying goal. Until that deeper motivation is discovered, meaningful agreement remains difficult. Influential communicators therefore ask questions instead of making assumptions. They become curious before becoming convincing. Another essential skill is emotional regulation. Resistance often triggers frustration. Criticism invites defensiveness. Disagreement tempts us to interrupt, justify ourselves, or react emotionally. But emotional reactions rarely reduce resistance. They usually increase it. Strategic communicators recognize that every emotionally charged conversation presents two challenges: the visible disagreement and the invisible emotional atmosphere. If the emotional atmosphere becomes defensive, productive thinking becomes difficult. Managing your own emotions, therefore, becomes one of the most persuasive actions you can take. This creates an important strategic shift. Reactive people respond to resistance with pressure. They repeat arguments, raise their voices, defend every point, treat disagreement as something that must be defeated. Strategic people respond with curiosity. Instead of asking, "Why won't they listen?" they ask, "What am I missing about their perspective?" That single question transforms confrontation into discovery. A practical way to apply this approach is through the resistance reset. When resistance appears, pause before responding. The first step is recognize. Notice your own emotional reaction without acting on it immediately. The second step is explore. Ask open-ended questions that uncover concerns rather than assuming you already know them. The third step is acknowledge. Reflect back what you have heard so the other person knows they have been understood. The fourth step is solve together. Shift the conversation away from opposing positions and toward shared goals. Instead of asking who is right, ask what solution benefits everyone involved. This simple framework transforms many difficult conversations into collaborative ones. A powerful real-world example can be seen in skilled mediators. Whether resolving workplace disagreements, family conflicts, or community disputes, experienced mediators rarely begin by proposing solutions. Instead, they first acknowledge each person's concerns with genuine respect. Only after everyone feels heard do they begin exploring possible agreements. Remarkably, resistance often decreases before any solution has even been offered. Why? Because people are no longer fighting to be understood. They already feel understood. You can begin practicing this immediately. The next time someone disagrees with you, resist the urge to defend yourself first. Replace your first reaction with genuine curiosity. Ask, "Can you help me understand what concerns you most?" Listen without interrupting. You may discover that what initially appeared to be opposition was actually uncertainty waiting to be understood. As you reflect on this chapter, consider one important question. Do you react to resistance or seek to understand it? Your answer will determine whether disagreements become barriers or opportunities. Because understanding reduces resistance. When people feel respected, they become more willing to reconsider, collaborate, and move forward together. And once you can transform resistance into understanding, you are ready for the highest expression of influence, not simply changing minds for a moment, but inspiring people to take meaningful action that lasts. That is where our journey continues next. Chapter 11. Become someone people naturally follow. The most powerful influence is never demanded. It is quietly invited by the person you choose to become. Many people spend years learning how to persuade others. They study communication, practice public speaking, read books on negotiation, develop stronger arguments. Yet they overlook the one factor that determines whether any of those skills will have lasting impact: character. People may admire your intelligence. They may respect your expertise. They may even agree with your ideas. But if they question your character, your influence begins to disappear. The opposite is also true. Someone of exceptional character often inspires trust before saying very much at all. Their consistency speaks first. Their integrity speaks second. Their words simply reinforce what people already believe about them. That is why character creates lasting influence. Skills may open opportunities. Character determines whether those opportunities continue. One of the strongest psychological foundations of influence is authenticity. Authenticity is not saying whatever comes to mind or refusing to adapt to different situations. Authenticity means your actions remain aligned with your values regardless of the audience. You do not become a different person depending on who is watching. Your kindness is consistent. Your honesty is dependable. Your respect does not depend on someone's status. People quickly recognize authenticity because it creates emotional safety. They know what to expect from you. They trust that your behavior will remain stable, whether circumstances are easy or difficult. Closely connected to authenticity is integrity. Integrity is the practice of doing what is right, even when there is no immediate reward. It is keeping promises when breaking them would be easier. It is admitting mistakes before someone else discovers them. It is choosing honesty when exaggeration might create a temporary advantage. Integrity is often invisible in the moment, but over time it becomes one of the strongest predictors of lasting influence. Every difficult decision quietly answers the same question: can people trust me? Repeated honest choices gradually become the answer. Another essential principle is consistency. Earlier, we learned that consistency builds credibility. Here we see that consistency also shapes identity. People become influential not because they occasionally demonstrate excellent character, but because they repeatedly live according to the same values. Anyone can appear patient for one conversation. Anyone can seem generous for one afternoon. Anyone can sound inspiring during one presentation. Lasting influence belongs to those whose values remain visible day after day, year after year. Consistency transforms admirable moments into dependable character. This naturally develops through self-leadership. Before anyone can effectively lead others, they must first learn to lead themselves. Self-leadership means managing your habits before managing people. Keeping promises to yourself before expecting others to trust your promises. Remaining disciplined when motivation fades. Choosing growth instead of excuses. Accepting responsibility instead of shifting blame. People rarely follow someone who cannot consistently guide their own behavior. Leadership always begins within. Perhaps the deepest principle of all is character itself. Character is the collection of values that guide your decisions when external rewards, recognition, or pressure disappear. It is revealed by ordinary choices. How you speak about people who are not present. How you respond when no one is keeping score. How you treat those who cannot offer you anything in return. Character is not a performance, it is a pattern, and patterns are what people ultimately remember. These principles create an important strategic shift. Reactive people focus on appearing influential. They concentrate on image, status, recognition, visibility. They ask, how can I get people to follow me? Strategic people ask a different question. What kind of person naturally deserves to be followed? That single question changes the direction of personal growth. Instead of chasing influence, they build the qualities that quietly attract it. A practical way to apply this idea is through the influence identity model. The first element is values. Know the principles that guide your decisions, especially when they become inconvenient. The second is alignment. Ensure your words, actions, and priorities consistently reflect those values. The third is service. Look for opportunities to improve the lives of others before seeking personal recognition. The fourth is growth. Remain teachable. People trust those who continue learning because humility communicates confidence rather than insecurity. The fifth is consistency. Repeat these behaviors every day until they become part of your identity rather than occasional efforts. Influence built this way becomes remarkably durable because it rests on character instead of circumstances. A powerful real-world example can be seen in respected community leaders. Many hold no significant political office or executive position. Yet when important decisions must be made, people naturally seek their perspective. Why? Because years of reliable service, honesty, generosity, and quiet commitment have earned something no title can provide: trust. Their influence did not appear suddenly. It accumulated through thousands of consistent actions that demonstrated character long before anyone recognized their leadership. Their example reminds us that influence is rarely created by one extraordinary achievement. It is built through ordinary faithfulness repeated over many years. You can begin strengthening your own influence today. Choose one daily behavior that reinforces your integrity. Perhaps it is keeping every promise you make, being honest even when the truth is uncomfortable, arriving prepared instead of relying on talent alone, speaking respectfully about others when they are absent, or following through on commitments without needing reminders. Small habits quietly shape powerful identities. As you reflect on this chapter, consider one important question: would people follow your example even if they ignored your advice? The answer reveals whether your influence depends primarily on your words or on the life those words represent. Because influence is ultimately earned through who you are, your character becomes your strongest message, your integrity becomes your greatest argument, and your consistency becomes the reason people continue trusting you long after individual conversations have ended. In the final chapter, we will explore the highest purpose of influence, not simply helping people make better decisions today, but creating a legacy that continues improving lives long into the future. Chapter 12. Create a legacy of positive influence. The greatest influence is not measured by the conversations you win today, but by the lives you help transform tomorrow. Every conversation eventually ends. Every meeting concludes. Every presentation finishes. Even the most persuasive argument fades with time. Yet some forms of influence continue long after the words themselves have been forgotten. A teacher's encouragement inspires a student to pursue an impossible dream. A parent's example shapes the character of future generations. A mentor's guidance changes the direction of an entire career. A leader's integrity becomes the standard others continue following years after that leader has moved on. These moments reveal a profound truth. The greatest influence is never confined to a single interaction. It becomes part of another person's life. It changes how they think, how they decide, how they treat others, and how they eventually influence the people around them. That is why the greatest influence outlives the moment. Throughout this journey, we have explored the psychology of trust, communication, emotional intelligence, relationships, leadership, and character. Each chapter has pointed toward one larger purpose. Influence is not about gaining control over people. It is about creating conditions where people can become the best versions of themselves. When influence is guided by service rather than ego, its effects continue long after the original conversation has ended. One of the most powerful ideas behind this is legacy thinking. Most people naturally think in terms of immediate results: today's deadline, this week's goals, this month's challenges. Influential people think beyond the present moment. They regularly ask, "What will remain because I was here?" That simple question transforms daily decisions. Instead of pursuing only quick victories, they begin building lasting contributions. They invest in people. They strengthen communities. They create opportunities that continue benefiting others long after they have moved on. Legacy thinking replaces temporary success with enduring significance. Closely connected to legacy is purpose. Purpose gives influence direction. Without purpose, communication easily becomes self-centered. people seek recognition, power, status, approval. Purpose changes those priorities. When your purpose becomes helping others grow, every conversation becomes an opportunity to create value. Every challenge becomes a chance to serve. Every relationship becomes an opportunity to leave someone stronger than you found them. Purpose transforms influence from personal achievement into meaningful contribution. Another essential principle is service. Throughout history, the individuals remembered most positively are rarely those who accumulated the greatest authority. They are those who consistently improved the lives of others. Service does not require extraordinary wealth or public recognition. It begins with ordinary actions, listening carefully, teaching generously, encouraging sincerely, sharing knowledge, supporting someone during difficult seasons. Service quietly communicates one of the most persuasive messages another human being can experience. Your growth matters to me. People never forget those who genuinely cared about their success. This naturally leads to meaning. Human beings long to believe their lives matter. We seek significance beyond personal achievement. One of the deepest sources of meaning comes from knowing that our actions have improved another person's future. Influence becomes deeply fulfilling when it extends beyond personal success and contributes to something larger than ourselves. Helping one individual develop confidence, encouraging someone to pursue education, supporting a struggling colleague, guiding a young professional. These moments may seem small, yet they often become turning points in another person's life. Finally, influence reaches its highest expression through social impact. Influence spreads. One person encourages another. That person encourages someone else. Ideas become habits. Habits become cultures. Cultures shape communities. Communities influence future generations. Most of us will never fully witness the complete impact of our positive actions. But influence rarely stops with the person standing directly in front of us. Like ripples expanding across water, every act of integrity, kindness, courage, and encouragement continues moving outward in ways we may never completely see. These principles create an important strategic shift. Reactive people focus on immediate persuasion. They ask, "How can I influence this conversation?" Strategic people focus on lasting transformation. They ask, "How can I positively influence this person's future?" That question changes every interaction. Success is no longer measured by winning an argument. It is measured by helping another human being grow. A practical way to apply this perspective is through the ripple effect framework. The first step is live the example. Model the values you hope others will adopt. People learn more from consistent behavior than inspiring speeches. The second step is invest in people. Share knowledge, encouragement, and opportunities freely. The third step is multiply growth. Help others develop the confidence and skills to influence people positively themselves. The fourth step is trust the ripple. Do not expect immediate recognition. Many of the most meaningful results of your influence may appear months or even years later. When practiced consistently, these 4 steps transform influence into a legacy that continues expanding far beyond your own efforts. A powerful real-world example can be seen in individuals who dedicate themselves to mentoring others. Many successful leaders credit a teacher, coach, manager, or mentor who believed in them before they believed in themselves. That encouragement often changed not only one career, but also countless lives influenced by that future leader. One act of mentorship became the beginning of an entirely new chain of positive influence. That is the extraordinary nature of legacy. Its greatest results often appear through the people we help, rather than the recognition we receive. You can begin creating that legacy today. Choose one person you can intentionally encourage or mentor this month. Offer your experience, share what you have learned, listen with patience, provide honest encouragement, celebrate progress. This truth brings our journey to its natural conclusion, where we will gather the lessons of every chapter into one final reflection, one that reminds us that real influence is never about having power over people, but about helping people discover the power within themselves. Influence has never been about having the loudest voice, the highest position, or the greatest amount of authority. It has always been about something far more enduring: trust, empathy, credibility, character. Throughout this journey, we have explored how influence begins with earning trust, understanding how people think, communicating with clarity, developing emotional intelligence, building meaningful relationships, leading through contribution, handling resistance with wisdom, and becoming someone whose character inspires confidence. Together, these principles reveal a simple but profound truth. Genuine influence is not something you demand, it is something you earn. Perhaps the greatest transformation is not learning how to persuade others. It is becoming the kind of person people naturally want to trust. Many of us begin life seeking approval. We hope others will notice our abilities, validate our ideas, or recognize our achievements. Yet lasting influence comes from a different mindset. Instead of asking, "How can I convince people?" we begin asking, "How can I create value? How can I serve? How can I leave every conversation better than I found it?" When those questions become habits, influence stops feeling like a technique and becomes part of your identity. Remember that none of the frameworks in this book are designed to manipulate people. Their purpose is to help you communicate with greater integrity, listen more deeply, lead more effectively, and build relationships founded on mutual respect. Like any meaningful skill, influence grows through consistent practice. Every conversation offers an opportunity to strengthen trust. Every relationship allows you to invest in another person's success. Every challenge gives you the chance to demonstrate calm leadership and dependable character. You do not need a prestigious title to begin. You do not need permission to become someone others respect. You only need the willingness to practice these principles consistently, one conversation, one relationship, and one decision at a time. Over time, those small choices become your reputation. Your reputation becomes your influence, and your influence becomes the legacy you leave in the lives of others. As you move forward, remember the thought that has quietly guided every chapter of this book. Authority can make people listen for a moment. Genuine influence gives them a reason to remember and a desire to follow. Thank you for joining this journey. May your words build trust, your actions inspire confidence, and your influence leave every person you meet stronger than before.